Let me tell you something powerful right now. Most people stay broke, not because they lack opportunity, not because they don't work hard, but because they're doing exactly what 99% of the world is doing. See, God didn't create you for average. He didn't design you for mediocrity. But if you follow the crowd, you're going to get crowd-sized results, broke results. You've got to make a decision, a real one, that you're not going to do what most people do. You won't think like them. You won't spend like them. You won't live like them. Most people consume more than they produce. This one principle, when truly understood, can expose the root of financial struggle, mediocrity, and long-term lack. Consumption is easy. It's what society teaches us from a young age. Consume media, consume food, consume entertainment, consume products. The entire system is built on consumption. We are bombarded with ads, lured by dopamine hits, and trained to believe that having more equals being more. But the truth is, the people who stay broke are the ones who live in a cycle of consumption without intentional production. Think about it, the average person wakes up and immediately consumes. They consume social media, they scroll through feeds, watch mindless content, consume someone else's opinions, someone else's creativity, someone else's agenda. They haven't even brushed their teeth and their mind is already filled with consumption. Then they move into consuming food, often fast and processed, no thought of energy or nourishment, just convenience and habit. They go to work not to produce value for themselves, but to punch it and survive, exchanging hours for a paycheck, and then they come home and consume more? Netflix, YouTube, gossip, noise. There's nothing inherently wrong with consumption. Everyone consumes. But when you consume far more than you produce, when you are always taking in and rarely putting out, you enter into a dangerous imbalance. You begin to feel stuck, stagnant, and disempowered. You feel tired, distracted, unclear. And financially, you remain broke? Not because you're not working hard, but because you're not producing value in proportion to what you consume. You're not building anything. You're not creating anything. You're not offering something the world needs in exchange for the life you desire. Production is the pathway to wealth. When you begin to create, to produce content, ideas, services, solutions, businesses, systems, products, you step into the realm of value creation. The marketplace does not reward consumption, it rewards production. It rewards those who solve problems, who bring ideas into the physical world, who innovate, who add more to people's lives than they take away. But the average person doesn't see this. They've been taught that life is about what they can get, not what they can give. And that mindset keeps them in lack. The principle of sowing and reaping doesn't work for the consumer. It works for the producer. You cannot reap what you do not sow, and you cannot sow what you do not produce. It's a spiritual law. God gives seed to the sower, not to the consumer. The person who consumes everything they receive, their time, their money, their energy, without producing anything with it, will remain empty. The one who produces something valuable with what they've been given, even if it's small at first, begins to multiply. Take a look at financially successful individuals, business leaders, creators, even people who work jobs but have risen above the average. They are all producing more than they consume. They are producing content, courses, books, mentorship, services, businesses, products, frameworks, systems, digital assets, or physical goods. They are always in the habit of creating. And what's more important, they produce before they consume. They prioritize output over input. They wake up and ask, what can I contribute today? Not what can I consume today? This is why financial freedom is not just about how much you earn, but about how much value you produce. And value is a result of production. The 1% have a producer's mindset. They wake up thinking, building, executing, investing. Even their consumption is strategic. They consume to learn, to gain insight, to fuel their production. They don't mindlessly scroll. They study. They don't binge watch entertainment. They analyze trends. They don't just buy products. They think about how to sell them better or innovate beyond them. Their consumption feeds their production. Now compare that to the broke mindset. The broke mindset consumes to escape, consumes to numb, consumes to feel something. It's reactive, not intentional. It doesn't ask, how can this benefit my purpose? But rather, how can this distract me from my pain? And in doing so, it robs a person of the very energy and clarity needed to create wealth. It leads to cluttered thinking, short-term gratification, and a life of reaction rather than creation. When someone is always consuming, constantly listening, watching, scrolling, shopping, eating, responding, they don't leave space to hear their own thoughts, let alone create anything valuable. Their energy is fragmented, their focus is broken, their mind is overstimulated, and most importantly, their ability to act powerfully is diminished. Because production requires clarity, decision, focus, and follow through. None of which exists in a life driven by passive consumption. It gets even deeper when we look at finances. The person who consumes more than they produce is also the one who spends more than they earn. They buy things they don't need to impress people who don't care with money they don't really have. They upgrade lifestyles instead of upgrading skills. They purchase escape instead of investing in growth. And then they wonder why they're still broke. The math isn't broken. Their mindset is. This same principle applies to time. The broke person consumes time. They kill time, waste time, burn time. But they don't produce results with that time. They don't multiply it. They don't leverage it. They don't honor it. The wealthy person sees time as a seed. They plant it into things that grow. They invest time to learn, to serve, to produce. And because of that, their time eventually buys them freedom while the consumer is still trading time for survival. Even emotionally, consumption plays a role. Many people consume emotions, drama, fear, offense, negativity. They absorb the emotional states of others, become reactive, and start producing out of woundedness instead of wisdom. But someone who guards their emotional space and produces peace, clarity, and vision, that person leads, that person builds, that person attracts. This truth is universal production precedes promotion. You will not be promoted in life, financially, spiritually, relationally, until you begin to produce at a higher level. And the people who remain broke, stuck, or frustrated are almost always stuck in the loop of consumption. They want results without responsibility. They want increase without input. But that's not how the laws of success work. If you want to break the cycle of lack, you must first break the addiction to consumption. You must be willing to unplug from the noise and plug into your purpose. You must choose to be a builder, not just a buyer, a contributor, not just a collector, a creator, not just a consumer. Because at the end of the day, wealth flows to those who produce. They chase comfort instead of calling. This is one of the deepest reasons most people never fulfill their potential and remain broke, unfulfilled, and directionless. Comfort is deceptive. It feels like safety, but it's actually stagnation. It feels like rest, but it's often disguised resistance. Most people live their lives chasing what is easy, familiar, predictable. They build routines not around growth, but around ease. They make decisions based not on their calling, not on purpose, not on divine assignment, but on what will cause the least friction, the least fear, the least risk. And in doing so, they sacrifice greatness for convenience. A calling requires discomfort. A calling will always pull you into a space where your current level of thinking, discipline, and experience are not enough. It forces you to grow, to stretch, to face things you'd rather avoid. That's why most people ignore it. They feel the nudge, the whisper, the pull of something greater. But they quickly drown it in entertainment, distraction, comfort food, comfort zones. They trade divine assignments for daily distractions. They chase weekends more than they chase wisdom. They seek approval more than they seek alignment. They make decisions based on what feels good now instead of what produces fruit later. People who chase comfort want predictable paychecks, even if those paychecks keep them broke. They want easy jobs, even if those jobs suppress their gift. They want to stay where they are, even if they know they are dying inside. Comfort is the silent killer of destiny. It doesn't come to destroy in one moment. It erodes you slowly, one compromise at a time, one excuse at a time, one delay at a time, until one day you look up and realize that your calling didn't die because it wasn't real. It died because you stopped answering it. There is a cost to ignoring your calling. That cost is usually paid in peace, fulfillment, and ultimately provision, because your provision is tied to your purpose. God funds what he assigns. When you pursue your calling, even when it's uncomfortable, the resources begin to align. The right people show up, the right doors open. But when you choose comfort over calling, you cut yourself off from divine flow. You work harder but produce less. You strive but never thrive. You chase jobs instead of building purpose. You manage time instead of mastering assignment. Calling isn't always clear at first, but it gets louder the more you move in faith. The issue is not clarity, it's courage. Most people already know what they're supposed to do. They've just been ignoring it for so long that they've convinced themselves it's unrealistic. They say it's not the right time. They say they're not ready, but what they're really saying is, I'm afraid to leave comfort. That fear is not from God. It's a trap designed to keep them broke mentally, spiritually, and financially. People who operate in calling don't always feel ready, but they are always willing. Willing to take the next step even when the path is unclear. Willing to face discomfort even when fear shows up. Willing to let go of what's familiar even if it means walking into the unknown. They understand that every breakthrough requires a breakdown of old habits, old beliefs, and old comfort zones. They don't wait for things to be perfect. They move when they hear the whisper. They trust the process even when it's painful. When you chase comfort, you build a life based on reaction. You respond to bills, deadlines, other people's agendas. You become a slave to the calendar instead of the creator. You live by default, not by design. But when you chase calling, you become proactive. You build vision. You create systems. You invest your time and energy where it matters. You say no to good so you can say yes to great. You don't follow trends. You follow truth. Comfort whispers lies. It tells you that you have more time. It tells you that things will change without your effort. It tells you that small compromises don't matter. It tells you that risk is too dangerous, that failure is fatal, that you're not qualified. And the more you listen, the more your inner conviction fades, your voice gets quieter, your dreams shrink, your fire turns into ashes. But calling tells the truth. It reminds you of what you were born for. It awakens what God placed inside you. It speaks to your spirit, not your fear. It invites you to become more, to rise up, to lead, to serve, to give, to build. Chasing calling doesn't always mean quitting your job or starting a business. Sometimes it means showing up with excellence right where you are. Sometimes it means leading your family with intention. Sometimes it means developing your gift in private until the public door opens. But it always requires you to say no to comfort. It always demands sacrifice. It always pushes you beyond the version of you that others are comfortable with. You cannot fulfill your calling and stay the same. You will have to leave behind old identities, toxic relationships, limited thinking. You will have to unlearn the lies that comfort taught you. That average is acceptable. That survival is success. That settling is wisdom. You will have to embrace rejection, face resistance, endure delay. But through that process, you will become who you were meant to be. Those who operate in calling often stand alone at first. Because the world celebrates comfort. It rewards the familiar. It applauds what is easy and mocks what is different. So when you start chasing your calling, don't be surprised if people don't understand. Don't expect applause. Don't wait for validation. Just move. Just obey. Just build. Because purpose doesn't need permission. And comfort will never invite you into greatness. It will always offer a soft pillow when you're meant to walk through fire. It will always give you reasons to wait when you're called to act now. It will always give you something to lose when you were born to gain. The longer you chase comfort, the harder it becomes to hear your calling. Because calling is like a signal. Clear when your heart is tuned, but faint when it's drowned by noise. Comfort increases the noise, it fills your schedule, distracts your focus, and makes you comfortable with compromise. Until one day you don't even feel the pull anymore. Not because the call stopped, but because you stopped listening. And that's how most people lose. Not by failure, but by comfort. Not by opposition, but by inaction. Not by lack of opportunity, but by addiction to ease. They avoid discipline and seek distraction. This is a pattern that silently destroys potential, drains time, and keeps people stuck in cycles of lack. Discipline is the bridge between vision and reality, the connector between intention and manifestation. But for most people, the very mention of discipline sounds restrictive, painful, or boring. They associate it with loss of freedom, not realizing that true freedom is on the other side of discipline. Instead of embracing the structure that builds wealth and purpose, they choose distraction. The endless buffet of options that keep them busy but unproductive. Distraction is easy. It's available everywhere. It disguises itself as entertainment, as urgency, as productivity even. A phone notification, a trending video, a useless argument online, another episode, another scroll. These are not just habits. They are the architecture of a distracted life. And while people are scrolling, watching, reacting, clicking, and switching between apps and tabs, the days are passing. The years are moving. Opportunities are fading. Discipline, on the other hand, demands presence. It asks you to choose focus when the world begs for your attention. It asks you to say no to the many so you can say yes to the few things that matter. People avoid discipline because it feels hard in the beginning. Waking up early, sticking to a plan, budgeting money, exercising, saying no to unhealthy temptations, working in silence, delaying gratification. All these things require intentional resistance to the easy path. The problem is most people are conditioned to choose comfort and stimulation over structure and consistency. They are taught to reward themselves before earning it. They are taught to follow feelings instead of principles. So when it's time to build something meaningful, the muscles of discipline are too weak to carry the weight. There is a law that governs growth. What you don't discipline will eventually dominate you. If you don't discipline your time, time will run you. If you don't discipline your mind, thoughts will scatter you. If you don't discipline your money, spending will enslave you. If you don't discipline your emotions, triggers will control you. Discipline is not punishment, it is preparation. It's the daily training of becoming someone who can handle the life you say you want. Without it, even success becomes dangerous. Without it, talent gets wasted. Potential becomes regret. Distraction, by contrast, creates the illusion of movement. It makes people feel like they're doing something, learning something, being part of something. But in reality, they're just burning time and losing clarity. Distraction makes them reactive instead of intentional. Every notification, every ping, every trend, every drama steals a little more of their focus. And focus is a currency. It's more valuable than time because without focus, your time produces nothing. That's why companies spend billions to keep people distracted. Because distraction is profitable to them, but deadly to the individual. A distracted person cannot build wealth. They can get lucky. They can stumble into opportunities, but they cannot sustain results. Because wealth requires long-term vision, consistency, planning, emotional control, all of which are products of discipline. A distracted mind spends impulsively, reacts emotionally, avoids discomfort, and consumes more than it creates. It looks busy but achieves little. It starts projects but finishes none. It sets goals but never meets them. It dreams big but lives small. Discipline builds character. It creates a track record with yourself. Every time you say you'll do something and actually follow through, you build self-trust. Every time you wake up when you said you would, read when you didn't feel like it, finish what you started, you're training your mind to follow your spirit instead of your feelings. That's when you become dangerous to mediocrity. That's when the world starts taking you seriously. Not when you talk big, but when your habits speak louder than your words. The undisciplined mind constantly needs motivation. It needs external hype, reminders, inspiration to take action. The disciplined mind, however, doesn't wait to feel like it. It moves regardless of mood. It understands that feelings are indicators, not dictators. It doesn't trust fleeting emotions with permanent decisions. It builds routines, not just moods. And because of that, it multiplies results while others are still talking about starting. One of the biggest lies people believe is that discipline is something only a few are born with. But discipline is not a gift, it's a choice made daily. It's not about personality, it's about priority. Anyone can choose discipline, but most won't because it's easier to blame circumstances than to face responsibility. It's easier to say, I'm just not wired that way, than to admit, I haven't been willing to train myself, but growth requires brutal honesty. And honesty will reveal that distraction is a habit, and like all habits, it can be broken. When someone embraces discipline, everything in their life begins to shift. Their mornings become more intentional. Their conversations become more meaningful. Their spending becomes more strategic. Their mind becomes sharper. Their emotions become more stable. They begin to lead their life instead of being led by it. They stop chasing what's urgent and start building what's important. They stop looking for shortcuts and start mastering the fundamentals. Discipline is what allows you to do what needs to be done, especially when no one is watching. It creates internal standards. It means keeping promises to yourself. It means turning down the volume of the world so you can hear your own purpose. And once you start living this way, you realize how much time and energy you were wasting before. You realize that distraction wasn't harmless. It was theft. It was stealing the life you could have had. And no one is coming to take that responsibility for you. This principle applies to every area of life. Health requires discipline in what you eat, how you move, how you rest. Relationships require discipline in how you communicate, how you listen, how you serve. Faith requires discipline in prayer and scripture, in obedience. Money requires discipline in budgeting, investing, and resisting unnecessary purchases. Business requires discipline in planning, execution, delivery, and leadership. There is no lasting success in any area without discipline. When people look at the successful and assume they're just lucky or naturally talented, they ignore the years of discipline that built the foundation. They don't see the early mornings, the late nights, the countless repetitions, the small boring tasks repeated until mastery. They don't see the discipline it took to stay consistent when no one clapped, to stay focused when everyone else was distracted. But that's where results are born, not in excitement, but in discipline. Discipline is also the filter that separates good from great. Many people have potential ideas and dreams, but they lack the structure to turn those into results. They are creative but undisciplined, intelligent but inconsistent, passionate but easily distracted, and so they live in a cycle of almost successful, almost wealthy, almost free. Discipline breaks the cycle of almost. It creates momentum. It builds over time. It compounds in value, and eventually it leads to transformation. There is no external breakthrough without internal discipline, no viral moment without private preparation, no financial abundance without financial discipline, no deep relationship with God without spiritual discipline, and no legacy without a lifestyle that supports it. The person who avoids discipline and seeks distraction is choosing delay, frustration, and regret. Not because they don't want more, but because they're not willing to become more. They fear rejection more than they desire success. This is one of the most subtle yet powerful reasons why people remain stuck, broke, and unseen. Rejection is not just a one-time experience. It becomes a mental prison for those who give it too much power. The fear of being told no, of not being accepted, of being laughed at, criticized, ignored, or misunderstood holds more people back than failure ever will. Success requires exposure. It demands that you put yourself out there, take risks, show your work, share your ideas, speak your truth, and offer value to the world. But if the fear of rejection is greater than the hunger for success, you will self-sabotage every opportunity before it even begins. Most people have deeply rooted beliefs tied to approval. From a young age, they are trained to seek validation. Approval from parents, teachers, friends, society. This becomes the default standard for action. So when someone feels the call to do something different, to take a risk, to start a business, to step into leadership, to speak publicly, or to break generational patterns, the subconscious programming kicks in. What will people say? What if they laugh? What if they reject me? What if I fail publicly? These thoughts don't just whisper, they scream. And so instead of acting boldly, people shrink. Shrinking becomes a survival strategy. It feels safer to stay in the background, to keep dreams private, to never ask for the sale, to never post that video, to never reach out, to never share the idea. People convince themselves that they're being wise or humble, but deep down it's fear, the fear of hearing no. And yet, that very no, they fear is the doorway to the yes they desire. Rejection is part of the process. There is no success without resistance, no impact without opposition, no breakthrough without challenge. But most people want guarantees before they move, and that's not how success works. Success demands courage. It requires the willingness to be misunderstood, the capacity to keep going after failure, and the boldness to risk embarrassment. Every successful person has a history of rejection. They've been told no, ignored, laughed at, betrayed, underestimated, and overlooked. What separates them from the masses is not talent, it's response. They didn't allow rejection to define their identity. They used it as fuel. They reframed it as redirection. They learned from it, grew through it, and showed up again and again until they could no longer be ignored. But most people, when they experience rejection once, make it mean something about themselves. They personalize it. If someone says no to their idea, they think it means they're not smart. If someone doesn't support their business, they think it means they're not worthy. If someone criticizes their content, they think it means they shouldn't be creating. They internalize rejection instead of interpreting it. And over time, this becomes a wound that bleeds into every area of life. Relationships, careers, finances, creativity, all become limited by a fear of being told they are not enough. This fear leads to a life of hesitation. People don't apply for jobs they want, don't pitch their services, don't pursue bold ideas, don't initiate conversations that could change their lives. They wait. They overthink. They analyze endlessly. They plan but never execute. Not because they don't want success, but because rejection feels like death to their identity. It's easier to stay in the safety of the familiar, even if it's painful, than to risk the pain of not being accepted. And this is why so many people stay broke. Success in any field, business, sales, art, leadership, requires asking. Asking for the sale, asking for the opportunity, asking for feedback, asking for support. And in the asking, you risk being told no. You risk being dismissed. You risk feeling small. But without the ask, there is no reward. Without exposure, there is no recognition. Without rejection, there is no refinement. The people who succeed are the ones who keep asking, keep knocking, keep showing up even when the door doesn't open right away. Rejection, when reframed, becomes a powerful teacher. It exposes weakness. It sharpens clarity. It teaches resilience. It humbles the ego. It removes the illusion of entitlement. Every time someone is told no, they have an opportunity to grow stronger. They can improve the offer, elevate the skill, sharpen the pitch, or shift direction. But this only happens when rejection is viewed as part of the process, not as a personal attack. One reason people fear rejection so deeply is because they are overly attached to outcomes. They measure their worth by results. If they succeed, they feel valuable. If they fail, they feel worthless. This identity-based thinking makes every rejection feel like an assault on their self-esteem. But the most successful people separate identity from performance. They understand that failure is feedback, not identity. That rejection is data, not definition. This frees them to take action without being emotionally paralyzed by every response. People who fear rejection also tend to live in comparison. They watch others who seem to be succeeding and assume they never get told no. They believe the lie that successful people always had support, always had momentum, always had believers. But behind every success story are dozens of moments when the world said no. When the idea was mocked, when the friends didn't show up, when the product didn't sell, when the post got ignored. What made the difference was the ability to keep moving forward despite the resistance. Fear of rejection often comes from trying to control perception, wanting everyone to like you, agree with you, applaud you. But the truth is, rejection is not just inevitable, it's necessary. It reveals who your message is for. It filters out the wrong audience. It strengthens your message by forcing you to clarify it. It pushes you to develop confidence that is internal, not dependent on applause. When you stop fearing rejection, you start speaking with authority. You start creating boldly. You start living authentically. And that energy is magnetic. The people who impact the world the most are not the ones who avoided rejection. They are the ones who endured it, who kept building after people walked away, who kept showing up when no one was listening, who kept offering value even when it wasn't received, who kept believing when the evidence didn't support their vision. That kind of faith, that kind of perseverance, that kind of discipline is what separates leaders from followers, creators from consumers, the wealthy from the broke. When fear of rejection rules your life, you end up building a version of yourself that fits in instead of stands out. You shrink your voice, you dilute your message, you hide your ideas, you play small. And while you might avoid rejection temporarily, you create a much deeper pain. The pain of regret, the pain of knowing you never really tried. The pain of wondering what could have been if you had just taken the shot. That pain lingers. It haunts. It steals joy quietly over time without loud announcements, just a slow erosion of self-worth and confidence. There is a cost to letting the fear of rejection lead. That cost is your voice, your vision, your value. It costs you relationships that were meant to elevate you. It costs you opportunities that were waiting on your boldness. It costs you growth because you never stretch where you are safe. And ultimately, it costs you success not because you weren't capable, but because you weren't willing to be seen failing in front of others on your way to greatness. They don't invest in self-education. This is one of the most overlooked yet critical reasons why most people stay broke. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack ambition, but because they stop learning after school ends. They rely solely on formal education, believing that a degree or certificate is the final step instead of the starting point. They trust the system to give them all the tools they need to succeed, without realizing that the system was never designed to create leaders, innovators, or wealth builders. It was built to produce compliant employees who follow rules and maintain the status quo. Self-education is the secret weapon of the successful. It is what separates those who adapt, evolve, and thrive from those who stagnate. While most people are entertained by screens, the wealthy are educated by them. While most people scroll for laughs, others scroll for lessons. While the masses binge content for pleasure, the 1% absorb knowledge for mastery. The difference is not just in information, it's in intention. Self-education is intentional. It's the daily decision to pursue wisdom, not for grades, not for approval, but for growth. The problem is that school conditions people to only learn when they're told to. They learn for tests, deadlines, and assignments. Once the structure disappears, their learning disappears too. They assume learning is over and real life has begun. But in reality, real life is the real test. And most people are failing at it because they never develop the habit of teaching themselves what matters most. They know more about pop culture than personal finance. They know the stats of athletes, but not the stats of their own bank account. They can quote movies, but can't quote principles of wealth, purpose, or success. Self-education is about taking full responsibility for your growth. It's understanding that no one is coming to teach you what you need to know. No school is going to break down how to build a business, how to manage emotions, how to lead with integrity, how to invest wisely, how to brand yourself, or how to turn pain into power. These things aren't on the curriculum because they create empowered individuals. Empowered individuals don't just work jobs, they create them. Empowered individuals don't wait for opportunities, they build them. Empowered individuals don't stay broke because they learn how money works. When people don't invest in self-education, they rely on outdated systems. They follow advice from people who have never built what they want. They base life decisions on opinions instead of principles. They repeat generational cycles because they've never challenged them with new knowledge. They trust mainstream narratives without question. They live by default, not by design, and as a result, they repeat the same year over and over, mistaking movement for progress. Investing in self-education doesn't always mean money. It means time, energy, attention, and humility. It means reading books instead of watching mindless content. It means listening to podcasts, watching seminars, taking courses, asking questions, studying mentors, attending workshops. It means finding what you don't know and pursuing the answers with urgency. Most people say they can't afford to invest in self-education, but in truth, they can't afford not to. The cost of ignorance is far greater than the cost of a course, a book, or a mentorship. Every financially successful person has made learning a priority. They study markets, trends, psychology, sales, leadership, negotiation, branding, and personal growth. They know that what you don't know can hurt you, and what you learn can unlock new income streams, relationships, and opportunities. They don't wait to be taught. They seek out teachers. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on discipline, because self-education builds discipline, and discipline creates results. People who fail to educate themselves often have the knowledge they were given, but not the knowledge they need. They were taught how to memorize, but not how to think. They were taught how to comply, but not how to create. They were taught how to follow instructions, but not how to solve problems. Self-education reverses that. It teaches you how to think critically, how to adapt, how to innovate. It teaches you to take ownership of your mind, your beliefs, and your future. One reason people don't invest in self-education is because they underestimate their own potential. They don't believe they're capable of more, so they don't seek more. They settle for what they already know, even if it's not serving them. They fear the discomfort of learning new things. They fear failure. But real learning includes failure. It includes confusion, frustration, and stretching. It includes the willingness to feel lost temporarily so you can grow permanently. Self-education is not just about skills. It's about mindset. When you expose yourself to new information, you challenge your limitations. You see new possibilities. You break mental barriers. You expand your vision. You realize that success is not a mystery. It's a formula, and that formula can be learned, but only by those willing to study, reflect, and apply. Knowledge alone is not power. Applied knowledge is, and most people don't apply what they learn because they never really learn. It stays surface, level, passive, and disconnected from their daily actions. Investing in self-education also requires humility. You have to admit that you don't know what you don't know. You have to be willing to be a student, to ask questions, to listen deeply. Many people are too prideful to learn. They pretend they know more than they do. They defend their ignorance instead of seeking truth. They see learning as a weakness instead of a strength. But the most powerful people are learners. They're always growing, always upgrading, always stretching. That's why their results keep increasing. The world is changing rapidly. Technology, business, communication, leadership, everything is evolving. Those who are not learning are falling behind, whether they realize it or not. The gap between those who self-educate and those who don't is widening. Not just financially, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Because self-education gives you perspective. It helps you understand people, navigate challenges, and see opportunities where others see obstacles. There are thousands of free and paid resources available today. Books, podcasts, videos, courses, mentors. The excuses are gone. What remains is the decision. The decision to either consume entertainment or education, to either distract yourself or develop yourself, to either repeat cycles or rewrite your story. People who succeed are not lucky, they are learners. They choose learning over ego. They choose mastery over mediocrity. They choose growth over guessing. And that choice makes all the difference. They trade time for money instead of creating value. This mindset is one of the most common and deeply ingrained mental blocks that keeps people financially stuck and emotionally drained. It is a system that has been taught, accepted, and passed down for generations. The belief that the only way to earn money is by giving your hours in exchange for a paycheck. This model seems practical and safe on the surface, but it is fundamentally flawed if the goal is financial freedom, time freedom, or purpose-driven living. Trading time for money places a ceiling on income and a limit on impact, because time is finite, but value is not. Most people are taught from an early age to go to school, get good grades, graduate, and find a job that pays well. That job usually compensates them based on the hours they work, the tasks they complete, or the rules they follow. They learn to equate their time with their worth, believing that if they want to make more money, they have to work longer hours. The result is a population of hardworking individuals who are exhausted, underpaid, and unfulfilled. They feel stuck in a cycle, working more, earning barely enough, sacrificing time with family, and delaying dreams because they never learned how to create value independent of time. Value creation is a completely different paradigm. It focuses on solving problems, meeting needs, delivering results, and providing transformation. When you create value, people will pay you not for how long it took you to do something, but for how much it improves their lives. A doctor might perform a surgery in 30 minutes, but the patient isn't paying for the minutes, they're paying for the years of expertise and the life-saving outcome. A coach might speak for 1 hour, but if that hour changes someone's mindset, business, or future, the value is far greater than the time invested. Time measures quantity, but value measures impact. Those who build wealth understand that their income should be based on the value they bring, not the hours they put in. They look for ways to scale their knowledge, their skills, their gifts, and their systems. They create products, services, or platforms that solve real problems and can serve many people at once. They write books, build courses, launch businesses, license ideas, and develop digital assets that work even when they sleep. They stop thinking like employees and start thinking like owners. Their goal is not just to get paid. They aim to get paid repeatedly for something they built once. When someone only trades time for money, they are limited by the number of hours in a day and the energy they have. Even if they're paid well per hour, they eventually hit a cap. There's only so much they can do, and when they stop working, the income stops too. This creates a life of pressure and hustle where rest becomes expensive and burnout becomes normal. But when someone creates value that exists beyond their physical presence, through content, intellectual properties, systems, or teams, they unlock leverage. Leverage allows them to multiply results without multiplying effort. One of the reasons people stay stuck in the time for money trap is because it feels more secure. There's a guaranteed paycheck, a predictable routine, and minimal risk. But that perceived security often comes at the cost of freedom. The job might pay the bills, but it rarely funds the vision. People find themselves busy but not productive. Paid but not progressing. Safe but not satisfied. They trade their prime years building someone else's dream because they fear stepping out to build their own. They avoid entrepreneurship, creativity, or bold moves because they were never taught how to create and package value. Creating value starts with a shift in thinking. It requires asking better questions. What problems can I solve? What knowledge do I have? What skills can I offer? What message can I share? What systems can I build? What experiences can I monetize? It's about moving from being a consumer to being a creator. It's about identifying pain points in the marketplace and positioning yourself as the solution. Every product or service that people pay for exists because someone created value. The phone in your hand, the clothes you wear, the courses you take, the apps you use, all of them are results of someone turning value into income. Value also comes from consistency, excellence, and character. People don't just pay for what you do, they pay for how well you do it, how reliably you do it, and how you make them feel in the process. Value is amplified by branding, communication, reputation, and delivery. The more you invest in becoming a person of value, the more the market responds. You don't need permission to start creating value. You need initiative, creativity, and the courage to offer something real, even if it's small in the beginning. The most successful businesses often start by solving one small problem really well. Those who remain broke often undervalue what they know, what they've been through, or what they can offer. They assume value has to be big, complicated, or perfect. They wait to feel ready instead of starting with what they have. They ignore opportunities to create and package their value because they are conditioned to think like workers instead of thinkers, creators, or builders. But the marketplace doesn't reward effort alone. It rewards results. And results are created by those who take what they have and offer it with clarity and confidence. Another key difference between trading time and creating value is scalability. Time is linear. You work, you earn, you rest, you stop earning. Value, however, can be exponential. A single book can impact thousands. A single video can reach millions. A single idea can become a movement. A single system can generate income for years. This is why the wealthiest individuals often work fewer hours than those who are struggling. They've built machines that work for them. They've invested in assets, not just tasks. They've trained their mindset to think in terms of impact, not just effort. Fear often keeps people from making the shift. They fear failure, judgment, rejection, uncertainty. So they cling to what feels safe, even if it's limiting. They tell themselves stories like, I'm not qualified, I'm not ready, or I'm not creative enough. But these are not facts. They are excuses that keep them in cycles of survival. The truth is, everyone has something of value, a skill, an experience, a message, a solution. The difference between the broke and the wealthy is not just what they have, it's what they do with what they have. Creating value is not about becoming famous or building an empire overnight. It's about recognizing the seed in your hand and planting it. It's about starting with service, asking how you can help, improve, or elevate someone else's life. Money follows value. Influence follows value. Opportunities follow value. The more value you create, the more freedom you gain. And that freedom is not just financial. It's emotional, spiritual, and generational. It's the freedom to design your life, to choose your path, to serve your purpose on your terms. They ignore spiritual and financial laws. This is one of the most devastating mistakes that keeps people in cycles of lack, stress, and limitation. Many chase money without understanding the principles that govern its flow, and many pursue success while neglecting the spiritual foundations that sustain it. The world has been designed with laws, unseen, unchanging, and undeniable laws that apply to every area of life, including wealth. Gravity doesn't care whether you believe in it or not, it still works. In the same way, spiritual and financial laws are always operating, whether people acknowledge them or not. When you violate them, you suffer the consequences. When you align with them, you experience breakthrough, clarity, and abundance. Most people remain broke, not because they lack opportunity or effort, but because they violate these laws daily without even knowing it. They violate the law of sowing and reaping by expecting to receive without giving. They violate the law of value by trying to take shortcuts and avoid becoming a person of worth. They violate the law of stewardship by mismanaging what they have, then blaming circumstances or other people for their lack of progress. They violate the law of focus by constantly switching paths, chasing shiny objects, and never mastering anything. And they violate the law of belief by carrying internal scripts that contradict the very outcomes they claim to desire. Spiritual laws are rooted in truth, and truth doesn't bend to feelings or opinions. The law of gratitude says that what you appreciate appreciates. When people complain more than they praise, they repel abundance. When they focus on what's missing instead of what they have, they block flow. Gratitude is not just an attitude. It's a frequency, and your financial life will rise or fall to the level of your frequency. You cannot attract wealth while thinking and speaking in the language of scarcity. You cannot grow spiritually while feeding yourself fear, envy, and resentment. The universe responds to who you are, not just what you want. The law of honor is another spiritual law people ignore. What you refuse to honor, you will never access. If you dishonor wealth, you block it. If you judge the wealthy and call them greedy or corrupt, you create a belief that having money makes you a bad person, and your subconscious will sabotage every opportunity to earn more. If you dishonor your own gifts, your own time, your own potential, then the world will reflect that dishonor back to you. Honor opens doors. Honor creates alignment. When you honor wisdom, mentors, principles, time, and even yourself, you begin to attract resources and relationships that were previously inaccessible. Financial laws are just as real. The law of compound growth says small, consistent actions over time produce massive results. Most people ignore this by seeking quick returns, instant gratification, or miracle solutions. They don't invest because they think the amount is too small to matter. They don't save because they want to enjoy now instead of prepare for later. They spend first and think later. They confuse income with wealth. They increase their lifestyle every time their paycheck increases, never understanding that wealth is not what you earn, it's what you keep, what you multiply, and what you pass on. Another financial law is the law of leverage. The wealthy use money, systems, people, and technology to multiply their results. The broke try to do everything on their own. They don't delegate, they don't automate, they don't outsource. They trade time for every dollar and never create momentum because they're always stuck in execution mode. Leverage is not exploitation, it's multiplication. It's wisdom applied to resources. It's using what you have to create more. Those who ignore this law stay tired, frustrated, and capped in their capacity. The law of intention says what you focus on expands. But most people never set financial intentions. They have vague goals, general desires, and no clarity. They say things like, I want more money, without defining how much, by when, and for what purpose. They don't set targets. They don't track their income. They don't study the flow of money in and out of their lives. As a result, money slips through their hands like water. They live by reaction instead of design. Intentionality is not just about ambition. It's about precision. It's the difference between motion and progress. The law of identity is one of the most powerful yet most ignored. You will never outperform the way you see yourself. If you see yourself as broke, you will act in ways that reinforce lack. If you see yourself as someone who struggles financially, your behavior will align with that image. If you see yourself as undeserving, unworthy, or incapable, you will repel opportunities. Identity is the thermostat of your results. It sets the limit. Until your internal belief matches the external goal, you will always sabotage your own success. The key is to upgrade your identity through vision, affirmation, community, and action. Spiritual growth and financial growth are not enemies. They are deeply connected. Money is a spiritual tool. It amplifies who you are. If you're greedy, money will make it louder. If you're generous, money will expand your reach. Money is not evil. It is neutral. The love of money is dangerous, but the understanding of money is powerful. People stay broke because they never heal their relationship with money. They fear it, judge it, or misuse it. They see money as an enemy, not a servant. But money, like any tool, must be understood, respected, and mastered. One reason people ignore these laws is because they were never taught them. School teaches math, not mindset. It teaches formulas, not faith. Families often model fear, not freedom. So people grow up internalizing lack, fear, and shame around money. They learn to survive, not thrive. They learn to conform, not create. But ignorance of the law doesn't protect you from its consequences. Whether it's gravity or giving, whether it's budgeting or belief, if you violate the principle, you bear the cost. People often resist spiritual and financial laws because they seem too simple. They think success must be complicated, mystical, or out of reach. But simplicity is not weakness. It's wisdom. The principles work if you work them. The laws reward those who obey them. It's not about being religious or perfect. It's about alignment. Alignment creates acceleration. When your thoughts, words, actions, and beliefs are all pointed in the same direction, momentum builds, and that momentum is what separates the few who break through from the many who stay stuck. Ignoring these laws creates internal conflict. You want wealth, but think like a struggler. You desire abundance, but speak limitation. You pray for opportunity, but prepare for failure. That contradiction creates tension in your spirit. It drains energy, clouds vision, and delays progress. Clarity comes when you align your beliefs with your behavior. Power comes when you submit to the principles that govern success. Most people are not out of alignment because they're evil. They're out of alignment because they're unaware. They don't know what they don't know. And what they don't know is costing them their peace, their progress, and their purpose. These laws require responsibility. They don't reward intention, they reward application. Reading about the law of giving doesn't activate it. Practicing it does. Knowing about stewardship doesn't create results. Managing your money wisely does. The laws are not secrets, they're available, visible, and timeless. They've worked for centuries and will continue to work. The question is not whether the laws work, the question is whether you are willing to work the laws. Because in every area of life, especially in wealth and purpose, you don't get what you want. You get what you are aligned for.